Welcome to Judicial Dollars and Cents, brought to you by Anders Virtual CFO Services team from all across the United States. I'm John Scott, and in each episode, we'll shine a light on the financial side of the legal world, turning law firm numbers into impact-driven stories. From taxes and profitability to practice growth and leadership, we sit down with law firm innovators who are shaping the future of the profession. Let's dive in, right here on Judicial Dollars and Cents. Hey, and welcome back to Judicial Dollars and Cents, where the business of law meets the practice of law. I'm John Scott with Anders Virtual CFO Services for law firms, and each week we sit down with successful attorneys, legal innovators, and business leaders to explore what it really takes to build a thriving law firm. We go beyond the courtroom to discuss leadership, profitability, operations, marketing, technology, AI, and strategies that help firms grow, scale, and create lasting value. Whether you're a managing partner, an emerging firm leader, or someone passionate about the future of the legal profession, our goal is to provide practical insights that you can put to work immediately. Today, we are pleased to welcome Megan Daic, founder and owner of Daic Law Firm in Houston, Texas. Megan founded her law firm with the belief that legal services should be accessible, understandable, and centered around the client's experience. Her practice focuses on bankruptcy, creditor litigation, business formation, contracts review, civil litigation, and personal injury, with an emphasis on helping individuals, families, and businesses navigate difficult legal challenges with confidence. According to the firm's website, one of its guiding principles is making complex legal issues understandable so clients can make informed decisions. Before entering private practice, Megan earned her undergraduate degree in government from the University of Texas at Austin, worked in Washington, D.C. on Capitol Hill as a political research analyst, and completed graduate work at the international affairs at Texas A&M University's Bush School, and later earned her law degree from the University of Houston Law Center, where she competed with the Blakely Advocacy Institute mock trial team. Today, she continues to build a practice focused on client advocacy, education, and entrepreneurship. Megan, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much, John. Thanks for having me.
Hey, I love to hear about your origin story. How did you want to become an attorney, and how did you get to the firm you have today?
Actually, when I was at UT for undergrad, I worked for a criminal defense law firm, thinking this is the route that I want to take. So I was studying for the LSAT. I was taking a Kaplan course, and I worked for this criminal defense firm when I decided I don't want to go to law school. It wasn't exactly what I expected it to be. Granted, I was, answering phones, going to the courthouse in person for filings. And I think just probably criminal defense was probably not the arena that I would want it to have worked in. And I just didn't realize that. So I kind of took a circuitous route, because when I graduated, I did go to DC. Because I knew that I wanted to work in government and politics in some way. And I think deep down, I was still interested in law, just needed a way to get back to it. So I kind of found that through working in government and nonprofits before I ultimately I started another degree first. I was starting a master's to PhD program in political science when I realized, I think my people are lawyers. And that's when I transitioned at University of Houston into my law degree.
So the positive outcome of you working at a criminal defense firm is you knew what you didn't want to do as a lawyer.
I think so. Although funny enough, when I was on the mock trial team, I became interested in at least prosecuting and thought, I could do criminal defense one day. But years had passed, and I think you just learn, how you would want to run a law firm and maybe how you wouldn't want to run a law firm.
So I want to talk about AI and how you might be using it in your practice to replace some of what are the best use cases you have for AI?
So we've used it from anything from, creating timelines, summarizing information, and of course, research. We also use it for emails. Honestly, my inbox is kind of one of the biggest nightmares and pain points for me. And so I have an executive assistant, but we've also used AI to help kind of sort through emails, draft some template responses that the attorneys can review and send out. We also use, a Claude account, but not for any specific confidential information, just kind of general information, usually kind of rephrasing an email before it goes to a client or opposing counsel. And I've also developed my own AI negotiation app that focuses on role play scenarios so that people can get repeatable role play practice. We've used that primarily on the intake side with our team because that's where we need a lot of training pretty regularly. And as a firm grows, your intake team grows. And they need a lot of help and support in figuring out how to kind of reframe, how to close a deal, those sorts of things.
That's a great use case. So you can make them better without actually losing an opportunity. I love that. In fact,
Absolutely.
I have to figure out how to do that on our side. Let's talk about entrepreneurship. You open your own firm, you're growing it. If you think back to the start and knowing what you know now, what would you do differently from the start today?
It's one of those things that you just get through experience. I think I would go into it with more confidence. There were a number of times, especially early on, where I just wanted to close the doors. I was really afraid, which made sense. I had no money, had very few cases coming in at first, and really was pretty new to the practice of law or at least to personal injury. I had worked at a plaintiff's medical malpractice firm, but hadn't really done like car wreck cases for very long. And so I think I would go into it kind of with more confidence and knowing that there's not one sure answer for any one legal question, which I think we think that it is. It's not like arithmetic where there's going to be one definitive answer. I would go to 10 different lawyers and get 10 totally different responses when I was looking for feedback and for mentorship.
So on the contingent side of things, do you try and focus on one type of contingent cases, or do you do the broad spectrum of contingency work? So in other words, MVA,
Sorry,
motor vehicle, med mal, motor vehicle, dog bite, do you do everything or do you focus on one area?
So now just because it's more certain, we actually focus more on our debt defense and Chapter 7 bankruptcy cases because we do offer flat rate fees, and that can either be in a lump sum or payment plans. And what I like about that is you're not fronting a lot of expense like you do with a PI case, and you can really forecast how much money is going to be coming into the firm. So it's a little more kind of slow and steady with foreseeable outcomes versus personal injury where, I mean, you could estimate, right? But it's still a bit of a gamble.
Well, one thing that made my eyes light up is the word forecast. And I love helping attorneys who don't typically have an accounting or finance background forecast their cash flow. And so when you said, it's a lower fee perhaps, but it's predictable and you're able to forecast that, then you can certainly scale that and do more volume to increase the future cash flow. How are you forecasting in your fixed fee environment?
Well, one thing that I love about what you all do is lawyers are not always great at math. And I will tell you that accounting, I mean, when I first started my firm and I was using QuickBooks, it was incredibly stressful. Even now, getting information to my bookkeepers, it's stressful. We do a pretty good job of, tracking incoming payments, even failed payments. As I'm sure you can imagine, we have clients who come to us, they're already in debt. So we do have to follow up on payments. And truthfully, forecasting is one of the things that we're working to improve right now. We have, software and spreadsheets. I now have 2 people who focus primarily on it, not including, our bookkeepers and, tax preparers, or we have a tax attorney that assists us. But honestly, it's the thing where I think law firms really do struggle with the most and need probably like a fractional CFO.
I love that you feel that way because I agree with you. You all don't have the background. You're great at your craft, but some attorneys see money in the operating account and they go, oh, I'm going to take a distribution or a bonus, not realizing that next week there's a payroll due and rent's due the week after that. And the worst thing that you can ever do is take money out of the firm and then have to put it back to make payroll. So we would like to build systems that help you predict what that balance sheet's going to look like 12 weeks from now, 6 months from now, and at the end of the year. And then what we do is when we build a forecast, we don't put it in the drawer and look at it in October. We want to look at it on a regular cadence so that if you're trailing off that trend line that's going to get you to your goals, we can say, what levers can we pull to get back to meet or exceed our goals? And so you really have to look at that forecast. We call it a dynamic forecast on a regular basis so that you can make those adjustments. On your
I love that, by the way, just so you know. The two things that I'm most focused on, I would say for this year, one is that it's forecasting, especially because we've added things such as like 401k with a match, right? These are things where it's like sometimes you're kind of guessing on the math, right? Knowing the answers and knowing the numbers is really important. So I know that's been a big focus for me this year. The other thing is on the intake side, which makes sense, right? Cases that you're signing up, conversions, retention, all those sorts of things. So incredibly necessary, but like you said, not necessarily something that lawyers are thinking about because it isn't really part of their craft.
Well, and it's not just you. I mean, we have dashboards in our own firm, not the BCFO division, but we're a full service CPA firm as well. And I have more experienced partners than and I'm certainly older than you are, that say, I don't have time to look at the dashboards, but they just put their head down. They do great work and the phone rings but if you pay attention to the data, you can always do incrementally better because you can make little adjustments. And I learned this from a very entrepreneurial attorney who grew his niche practice from the St. Louis area to 44 states into the United Kingdom. And he did it by paying attention to data. And he knew that he could go to a new city and in 6 months be at break even, hire the second attorney and start making money after that. So data is a powerful tool. To that end, what case management system do you use?
So on the intake side, we recently switched. We're using Lawmatics, and that's just because it has really great automations, and that includes text messages, so emails and text messages, as well as task automations. And then for case management, we use Clio, so that's Clio Manage.
Okay, now are you using the Clio accounting package or are you exporting to QuickBooks?
So we use Clio Payments for like as our processor because we have lots of credit card and debit card payments. And then what we do is that along with our HR and payroll software, it's Gusto. All of that syncs right now with, we use kind of online bookkeeping called bench.co.
Okay, that's awesome. And you look at those statements, the balance sheet and income statement on a regular basis every month anyway?
I do. Well, sometimes, it takes them a little bit of time to get caught up on certain things. But once those come in, I review it. It is very stressful though. I will let you know, not being a numbers person, it's stressful. Now, 10 years later, I understand it a lot better, but it's still, things can still be variable and it's still always stressful.
So because you do a couple of different things, do you understand the profitability of those lines of businesses within your firm? I mean, is that something you focus on as well?
We do, and we're trying to get better at it. I think that that's necessary, especially when you're talking about like the attorney that you mentioned who was able to scale to 44 countries or states. I'm sorry,
44 states, yeah.
44 states, and then abroad as well. I mean, that is intense scalability. And so really trying to focus on that, being able to expand into other states, but making certain that really, I mean, I'm not looking to retire anytime soon, but I am constantly thinking about if I did want to sell my firm, right? If I need kind of an exit plan, what would that look like? And do I have things in place in order to do that? And so I'm trying to work on that now so that when I'm like some of my friends who are, in their, let's say, later 60s, 70s, or even 80s, asking, hey, do you have a retirement plan? The answer, especially for a lot of solo practitioners that I see, is no, not really. Or their plan is, well, I'll just mediate. Well, that's still working, right?
Right. And too many attorneys work, and I know that they're really good at what they do, but they just continue to work and they die in their chair. When in my nirvana for attorneys, they would have outside hobbies. They would build a business that doesn't require them to be there. And at some point would transition either internally to the younger people that you've hired along the way or to another law firm. And we're coming to a day when the transferability of law firms will be easier. So I love the fact that you want to prepare for that. What's one thing that you would change as a managing partner that you want to change over the next year that you're doing that you don't want to do anymore?
Well, that I don't want to do anymore. I think I have two answers to this. One is sort of what you said just a moment ago, which it's making certain that you're setting things up in a way that your younger attorneys, right, and your younger staff, and I say younger, I mean people who will be there longer, right, after I retire or after I'm gone, that they're able to kind of, step in into my role or whatever role so that the firm continues to work. Right now, we're not quite there. There's still a lot that it feels like is dependent on me. And so it's really kind of learning to let go of that control and the reins earlier and set things up in a way so that you're constantly preparing for that change.
So when you look for a new attorney, are you hiring right out of law school or an experienced lateral hire?
So it does vary. Typically, just because I am an adjunct law professor, I am able to identify students that are coming out of law school. And we have law clerks, so it's kind of an easy way to find law clerks. So sometimes it's, our clerks or younger attorneys. We've got, one right now who is, more than 10 years into her career, but she was returning to law after having kids. We have a former ADR student of mine who works for us. I've had somebody else who was moving into the state of Texas, was getting licensed. We're really flexible with people based on where they're at in their career. And then I've got one that'll be starting later this year who's sitting for the bar exam. So it does kind of vary.
I realize Texas is a big state, but where do you teach?
So I teach, this is a bit of a transition. I've been with the University of Houston for the past more than, I think, 10 years now, teaching and directing their ADR competition team program. I now still teach at University of Houston for this upcoming year, but I'm now coaching at St. Mary's, and I should be teaching there within the next year as well.
What are you coaching?
I coach dispute resolution. So all of my students compete in either negotiation or mediation, arbitration, or client counseling.
Okay, I kind of misunderstood the coaching piece. And there's no NIL in what you do, right?
No, this is our kind of nerdier sports teams for law. You can do mock trial, moot court, or dispute resolution. Those are your options.
The reason I ask is that you seem to have touched most of the major universities in the state of Texas. I'm sure there are others, but you have a very diverse Texas background, and I love it. When your career is over, what are you going to do?
Well, oh my goodness. That is a great question. Something I've been thinking about a lot. We did start Empathic Edge, which is an interspace negotiation, like AI role play app. So that is something that we're working on building. And that really stemmed from having spent some semesters, 20 hours a week, volunteering my time coaching law students, which I've loved, but not everybody, has the ability to do that. And I wanted to be able to scale it up so our students would be able to practice 24/7 without having to have that human capital that it just necessitates. So we're working on building that. Hopefully that will be at a place to where I could also have other people running that later on. But I love reading. I love writing. I've got a couple of writing projects going on right now, and I'm speaking a lot more. So I think, 30 years from now, definitely want things to be a lot slower, but I have too many projects, I think, to step away from everything.
Do you think you will go into mediation later in life on a grander scale? And the reason I ask is I talked to a family law attorney the other day, and something she started a few years ago is probably going to be bigger than her law practice, in that she's running online mediation in several states, and she plans to keep expanding that. Now, mediation in her world is different than what you might be doing, but it is something that you could probably do beyond the bounds of or the borders of Texas.
Absolutely. So I am a mediator. Typically, you have to go through a 40-hour course. I've also done the family law mediation training just because I thought, it would teach great skills, which it did. So I do mediate, but because I'm still actively litigating in my firm, it makes it tough to really transition fully to mediation. I have some friends who have really grown their mediation practices, especially since COVID. And you have virtual mediations. I have a friend and a colleague, Jeff Abrams, who I don't remember what it was after COVID, let's say after 2020, he had done mediations from Mexico. He was living, I think, in San Miguel de Allende. He would travel to the Northeast. He'd be in Texas. So he could be anywhere. And was doing hundreds. And I'm sure still does each year. So it's definitely flexible. If you're doing online mediations, like you mentioned, you can mediate in various states for, various states as well. So I do love that. What's interesting to me, though, about mediation practices is when you talk to mediators, they also aren't always, like lawyers, thinking about scalability. And that's something I will think about as well, because a mediation practice is largely dependent on the individual, on the mediator.
But you could certainly build a team of mediation professionals that would be helpful. And the one thing, COVID was terrible for all of us. But the one thing it taught us is we didn't have to be in a bricks and mortar office to do our job. And Texas has really boomed from this because a lot of folks from high tax states like California and New York have moved to non-tax states because of that. They don't have to be in California. They don't have to be in New York. They can be where the weather is at least good half the year and not oppressively hot. But, COVID did stink, but there were some decent outcomes from it on the technological side.
Absolutely.
So
even my bankruptcy hearings now. Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
No, go ahead. Keep going.
I was just going to say, even my bankruptcy hearings. So typically with the Chapter 7 bankruptcy, we have at least one meeting with the trustee. Before COVID, it was always in person. During COVID, they did it telephonically. And then for the last, I think, 2 years now, it took them a while to figure out Zoom. Now they're all virtual, which is also great for the trustees, but really great for our clients as well.
Right. And it doesn't tie you to a location or an office. You can do it from wherever you are, as long as you have good internet. Hey, exactly. As we start to wrap up and before we finish, I want to talk about University of Texas and your experience there. And specifically, you were there during the Vince Young era, correct?
That's correct. Yes.
And Vince, well, I have a little bias against UT because we were part of the Big Eight. I went to University of Missouri, and Texas was in the SWAC or whatever. They weren't a part of it. And then they came in and took it over because they are the 800-pound gorilla in the room. And really, in my mind, ruined the Big Eight. Now, we ran to the SEC, thank God. They don't really love us there, but they accept us there. And now Texas is in the SEC. But there's so much money behind it. And Sarkisian and Arch Manning. I mean, do you follow UT football today?
I don't as much now, just because I haven't been to a football game in years. And for me, like UT football, I don't care if they're having a good year, bad year. I'm like, we had Vince Young. We won the national championship when I was there, and I can always tout that.
That's awesome. I love football, and I can't wait. I think there's like 37 days before the first game, but I'm glad to have Texas in the SEC, even though they ruined the Big Eight. But
well,
Megan, thank you so much. Before we wrap up, what's the best way for folks to get a hold of you and your firm?
Yeah, you can reach out to us. Our website, it's my last name, so it's DAIC, that's DIH, or you can reach me at megan@empathicedge.com. I'll give you that email because it's a little bit easier to spell. So it's empathicedge.com.
Megan, thank you so much for joining us today. And thank you all for listening on Judicial Dollars and Cents, where the business of law meets the practice of law. If you enjoyed today's episode, please like, follow, and subscribe wherever you listen to podcasts. Better yet, share this episode with another law firm owner or managing partner who could benefit from Megan's insights. Our mission is simple: to help law firm owners build stronger businesses, deliver exceptional client experiences, and create firms that thrive for generations. Again, I'm John Scott with Anders Virtual CFO Services for Law Firms. We'll see you next time on Judicial Dollars and Cents. Thanks for joining us on Judicial Dollars and Cents, presented by Anders Virtual CFO Services. If you found value in today's conversation, be sure to follow or subscribe wherever you get your podcast. To learn more about how Anders helps law firms strengthen their financial foundations and drive growth, visit anderscpa.com. Until next time, keep making smart decisions that make perfect sense.